And good morning. So today is the 5 a.m. stream. This is a programming stream. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be doing a bit of 6502 and then some 68,000 assembly. Essentially, I'm going to be writing some of the super simple episodes which will later become the tutorials. So if you want to see a bit of programming, maybe that'll be interesting to you. Now, apart from this stream, every Saturday I have a gaming stream, which is effectively early morning for you people in the UK, but it's sort of late afternoon in Japan. So if you prefer some gaming content, please join me for that. Tomorrow we'll be looking at the Super Nintendo. I have a random bag of tat that I bought from the local second-hand shop, so we'll be checking out what weird stuff I have purchased. Now, after that, in a week's time, I'm going to be having a rather special one. I've got a strange collection of these sort of mini fake arcade machines, and I'm going to be doing a bit of a rundown of them, an unboxing, trying them out, seeing which is the best, and I will be giving 2 of them away in a very easy programming competition on my forum. So if you want a chance to see what you could win and learn about the competition, please make sure you join me in a week's time for the Saturday stream. Now, I'd just like to point out that the Chibi Akuma's website now has a Discord server. There's a link up there in the chat, so please join that if you would like to join my Discord and chat about programming or whatever else you feel relevant. It's welcome to everyone, so please join that. Unfortunately, I do still have a cough today, so I'm having to mute the mic every time I cough. I apologise for that, but please don't worry, because despite coughing rather a lot, I feel fine, so hopefully it won't cause any reduction in the quality of the programming such that it is. I'd like to say hello and thank you to Robert, Lee and Oleg for joining me. It's very kind of you once again, especially Oleg, who I believe it's about 1 in the morning, so very dedicated service, joining me at such a inhospitable hour. And we just have a few more minutes until the designated 5:15 start, so we'll just wait a moment before we actually start the stream. Today we're going to be starting with my video preview seems to have stopped. That's not very good, is it? Hoping you can still see me okay. We're going to be starting with some PC Engine, some NES and Super Nintendo programming at first. We will then move on to some 68,000 later. I'd say just probably after around an hour, I think. Move on. Hoping you can actually see me, because my live preview has stopped, but I've still got green lights here. So just bear with me a moment while I check out everything is going okay. Well, that's slightly frustrating. Just re-update my phone here. Okay. My phone disconnected. I was rather worried that the stream had dropped, but it does seem to be okay. Okay. It's my phone obviously playing up there. I hope your home computers are working a little bit better. Okay. Well, I think everything's set up correctly, so let's go over to the programming window and let's start the stream. Okay, so what we're going to be doing today is we've got a variety of systems here, the NES, the PC, pressing the wrong button there, PC Engine and Super Nintendo. Now, I've got these sort of template ones that I've programmed up here, and they will show my, if I just wait a moment, show the Chibi, come on. Oh, well, if I compile the SNES one on the PC Engine, that won't work very well. So if, here's our Chibico character. So this is what will become the advanced version of the Simple series. The Simple series, has 2 versions for each episode. An advanced version, where we show a 48 by 48 bitmap, and a simple version where we show effectively a single tile, 8 by 8. So what we'll be doing this morning is we'll be altering this example. We're trying to make some optimizations if we can spot them, and also we'll be just simplifying it down to just show a single 8 by 8 version, which will just be the PC bitmap version rather than this advanced version. So we'll be going through them all. But when I've been going through the, I've been writing a few of these episodes during the week so far, which will later be put on the website, of course, and things. But I've been noticing a few things in some cases that I can see that I can improve. And so I will be just sort of looking over just to see if, again, if there's anything I think I can make a little bit better. Because sometimes there's some optimizations. Some of these were based on programming that I did about a year or two ago when it must have been about a year ago now, when I did the Grime 6502 series. And fortunately, my 6502 has got a little bit better since then. Not much better. It still has a way to go, but sometimes I can see things now that are not very efficient, and if I can, will try and improve them. So, first of all, let's save this with a new name, PC bitmap. And we need to try and remember what format we need for the PC Engine, which is a challenge. I can't remember sometimes. Fortunately, we can go here to 6502 and PC Engine and save raw bitmap, and this should export in the format we need. So if I go to my SSD back here and just save t.raw, this will save a bitmap file to the disk. Do I want to replace it? Yes, I do. Get that out of the way. And then if we go to SSD drive here, just so I can see the file, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this little program I wrote called bin2asm, and we're going to output binary, and we want one entry per line. Sorry, I'm about to cough again. Because this will be a nice, neat file for. Oh, okay. Oh no, okay, yeah. Sorry. So we've got 4-bit planes per line. So I'm getting used to the 1-bit per pixel systems. No, that's not going to help. Maybe 2. Yeah, that's what we want. That's what we want. The format of this system is a little bit odd. We'll be covering that in the tutorial, of course. I have covered it already in the advanced series, but essentially what you've got here in this... Oh, no, that's not right. This is bit plane 0, I believe. And this is bit plane 1. And then we've got 8 lines of that. And you can see the smiley face just here. And here, I think this is bit plane 2. And then this is bit plane 3. Well, excuse me. Do apologise. Okay, so that's the format we've got here. So hopefully, we'll just renumber these. So they should be 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So that's the data that we're going to be reading in. Now the code is designed to load as much data as there is, so we shouldn't need to change this. And I think actually if we run already, we will actually okay, I'm saving to the wrong disk here. Okay, that's a mistake. I'm saving to the X drive. Silly. Don't know how that happened. Okay, well, it's certainly not going to work. one thing I've been doing is I've been altering my running scripts to try and detect for common mistakes like that, and it will pop up a warning saying, hey, the file's on the wrong drive, it's got to be on the same drive as the executables and the batch files. There's been a few people who've been having a little bit of trouble with my scripts. Excuse me, I'm coughing again. And if there's anything I can do in the scripts to sort of help people out, I am trying to make those changes. I'm hoping to release a new version of the Z80 tools around Christmas time. I've got a new version ready with better scripts, but I just need to try and test it on a variety of systems to make sure it works on, you know, the 32-bit Windows XP if it can, and the latest 64-bit Windows 10 like this one, and where possible everything in between. So, you know, a little bit of testing is required before I want to release a new package. So hopefully a new version will be coming out with some better scripts and with the latest source files already included. Now, it may look like we've actually already finished, but we haven't, because it's printing a large number of tiles to the screen here that we simply don't want. Now, this fill area with tiles routine is designed for grid layouts, and that's no longer needed. We just want to draw a single tile to the screen now. So all we need is we need rid of this. And we don't need this. No, 256. So the code here, if you're only familiar with 6502, you're probably looking with some, I've done that wrong. That should be ST1 there. You're probably looking with some confusion as to what on earth all of this is, these ST0, ST1, ST2. Well, the PC Engine isn't a 6502. It's a 6280, if my memory serves me correct. And this is a special processor that Hudson rolled themselves. Now, it's based on the 6502, which is why it's part of these tutorials, but it has some extra commands. ST0 and ST1 and ST2 will save a fixed value directly to the video hardware. ST0 selects a register, so we're selecting register 2 here. That's the data port. That's where we're going to send data to. That's where we write data into video RAM. ST1 is the low byte of the data we're writing, and ST2 is the high byte. So we're writing here 384, I think that is, and that's the tile number that we want to show. Now the memory actually overlaps, so the start of the memory is the tile map, but it's also pattern 0. So we're starting at 256 because the first 256 or so are unusable because of that overlapping. So that confused me when I started doing PC Engine. So we've still got a smiley, and I think that now is just stripped down just to do the single tile. We don't need these anymore. Those won't be necessary. This will be the same as is, because even though we're doing just a single tile, I want to leave it in the same format so that people can easily add more code to it later. So just reposition these. Hello there, Evil Sandwich. It's very kind of you to join me. We're doing some 6502 here on the PC Engine, writing what will become a tutorial later on. So the only question now is there anything that I can optimize in here? Some of these I was using clear carries and rotate lefts instead of arithmetic shift left, which is just wasting a byte there. But it looks like I'd already made that. That was a sort of when I when I moved from Z80, that was something that I was doing that was a bit naive, shall we say. Didn't appreciate that the arithmetic shift left could do what I wanted, and didn't use the carry in the same way. Oh, incidentally, if you're joining me for the Saturday streams, you'll be quite mildly amused possibly to learn that I've actually changed my hardware. I've now got a video splitter and a second mini monitor. Before I was playing the games through the OBS capture window using my video capture hardware. Now I've got this sort of very small monitor with a splitter, and as I had suspected, the video was being delayed by a good few frames by the time OBS was showing it to me, which in part might justify my terrible gameplay. So if you join me tomorrow, you will probably see new excuses for the terrible gameplay. I hope maybe the gameplay will be slightly better, but I can't promise anything. So we'll just have to see what happens. But as I say, I've gained yet another monitor now. I've now got 3 normal monitors and this tiny little TV that's designed for use in a car back seat. But it does allow for HDMI, VJ and old analog TV in, which is a quite impressive range. But maybe when I come to reorganise my desk next, I need to put one of my proper TVs in the mix, because my HDMI screens, the main 4K one is a normal layout, but the other 2 are vertical, so plugging computers into them and things, they won't be, unless I'm going to lie on my side while I'm doing the gaming, I can't use them. So this design wasn't designed for plugging in old computers, so the mini TV we're using tomorrow, hopefully. But just thought you might be interested in the challenges of someone starting live streaming. Things you don't necessarily think about when you start these things. But the splitter cable's literally just a crude, I think it's just a Y split, they're just a pair of wires coming out, and I was originally thinking you'd need some kind of device that was doing some filtering and boosting, but I'm pretty certain there isn't anything in there. There could be like a resistor, but not much more. And the quality looks fine, so I don't think we're losing too much. So interesting evil sandwich. I mean, it's the other way for me. I mean, as you're sure you've seen, I define these ZHZL things so that I can use the 652 as a Z80. But to be honest, when it's difficult, because when you start a new processor, you tend to look at it from the perspective of the processor you already know. So for me, I was like, well, the 6502 only has 3 registers. That's terrible. That's awful. I can't work with 3 registers. What's going on? But then if you look at the TMS 9900, the documentation will refer to that as having 16 registers. And really, by the Z80 definition, that's not true. By the Z80 definition, I think it has 3. And then none of them are general purpose at all, not even as far as the X and Y. But sorry, just coughing again. But the TMS 9900 uses a bank of memory as a 16-bit workspace. Each register is 16-bit, you see, and it's got 16 registers. And effectively, it's like a mini 0 page. So the TMS 9900's workspace registers, which, as I say, it refers to all through its documentation as the registers, are effectively like the direct page in the Super Nintendo, I guess, where you can move it around for separate subprograms and things, which, as I say, when you look at that system and then you look back at the 6502, the 0 page looks far more powerful than when you look from the Z80 side. But I mean, it's all subjective. I mean, one thing, Evil Sandwich, and I'm sure you know this already, but if you have a look at the IX and IY registers, if you're in a bind and you wanted to, you could use the IX as kind of your direct page pointer. Now, of course, it's going to be slower because those commands all use a single byte. But as I say, if you were looking to kind of sort of convert 6502 code to Z80 quickly, I think that would probably be the best way. But anyway, I'm sure you've got your own ideas on that. But just my ramblings on it. I hope you're enjoying Z80 Evil Sandwich. As I say, I can understand. I can understand why you're a bit surprised by it, shall we say? You know, these moving from one system to another. I mean, even 68,000 from Z80 sometimes feels a little bit weird in the way because the Z80 split its high and low parts separately much more clearly, and even 68,000, which is obviously a far more powerful language, can be a little bit uncomfortable when you're moving from another system you were very satisfied with just through experience, and then you're moving to one that's just different and doesn't really want to work in the way you want to work anymore. So I say I fully understand. Oh, hang on a minute. Oh, okay. I've been trying to optimize these just to remove the macros, but it looks like I've removed the macros from the code, but left them in the definitions at the top. So let's just double check that. Let's try this code here. I can't see any NES. Oh, it's coming. There it is. So there we go. It just took a little while to start up there. That looks alright. So can we delete these? Because I want rid of these definitions. They're ugly. I don't know, Evil Sandwich, if the Thai 83 is literally made anymore. When I started the tutorials, I said that it was. It's certainly sold, but I can't help wondering if it's just old stock. But the Z80 is definitely still made, because I was able to buy a brand new one in Japan from Amazon for $3, and I think it's probably the only. I'm not sure if the other processors are still made in. I mean, I know you can get them, but I couldn't get a 6502 or a 68,000 in the same way. I've got a sort of a shelf, 6502 and 68,000 that I use for the photographs and things. I don't actually have it plugged into anything, but they were both bought in the UK from eBay. And in the case of the 6502 one, it's like it's a salvaged one. But I've heard the 6502 is still made, but as I say, I just don't see it in the same way. But it is nice to see the old processors, still around though, because I'm not such a fan of the FPCGA program solution, because I say that it's good if as a last resort, when you've got gate arrays and things that are too expensive to manufacture. But I do like to see a real CPU in the systems, and I know things like the Phoenix C256 and the Commander X16, they have got real CPUs in them, so I guess they are still available in that capacity. But I was struggling just a little bit to find them in Japan. Anyway, so we're just going to do the same for this one. We're going to export our sprite again, our little smiley face here. It's a different format for the NES. So where is it? NES. Okay, right. Yeah, okay. Well, as I say, I'd seen it. The Thai 83 was on sale on Amazon in Japan, but everything is, so it didn't. Don't know what to make of it. But in Japan, you see lots of calculators and things, but they're Japanese brands, of course. I don't know what processors they use. If I was gonna sit there in the hardware store with my phone out, it'd be quite interesting because I think some of them use the SH2 or SH3, the chip that was used by the 32X and the Saturn, and I believe some use 68,000. But yeah. What systems am I working on right now, Evil Sandwich? Well, I mean, at the moment, on a day-to-day basis, I'm working on these tutorials, which are the 6502 systems I'm currently covering. They're just a simpler tutorial series for absolute beginners. Now, my plans next year are it's not as many because I'm struggling to add more, and I want to try as much as possible to keep the old content going, just because I don't want to disappoint existing sort of viewers and things. But what I'm planning is the PDP-11 processor. I will be using a PDP-11 simulator, E11 I think it's called, and also the UKNC, which was a Russian home computer based on the PDP-11 processor, so that should be quite interesting. It's an interesting processor. The TMS 9900, which was only really used by the TI 994A home computer. A fascinating processor again. I'm kind of focusing more on processors next year and less on individual systems, just because a lot of these processors weren't widely used, and I think it, from point of view of attracting new viewers, I think it's going to be the processor types that will attract the viewers rather than the systems. So covering relatively few systems and relatively more processors, I think, will be more beneficial for attracting people to my channel. So those are the first two. I'm also going to be doing ARM. We're going to be covering that on the Game Boy Advance and also the RISC OS machine, RISC OS simulators. And 8086 we'll be using we'll be using DOSBox for 8086 with CGA, EGA and VGA hopefully. And also I will be covering, what's the other one? Oh, and also the WonderSwan, that was it. The other one was the WonderSwan that used a 186 processor, so we'll be covering that as well. So that's the initial plans. I've started doing 65816, yeah, that's right, 65816, the Super Nintendo 16-bit processor. That will be on the Super Nintendo. Also, maybe the Phoenix C256. I was having some trouble with the emulator. It seemed to have bugs in the processor on it. So I will have another look at that some point next year and see if I can, if the bugs are fixed, because I need to have a stronger base before I start programming on it. I want to do the Vectrex at some point, 6809, and also the Dragon 32 6809. They'll probably be late next year, maybe. I don't know. It's I mean, a lot of how fast I can cover these and what I can cover will be answered over Christmas. I have a suspicion that I won't get as much done over Christmas as I would like, just because of other things. You know, I'm going to be live streaming this year. I'm hoping to do live streams 3 times a week over Christmas. So this slot will be there. The Saturday slot will be there at the same times as usual. And also I'll be doing a midweek MS-DOS stream. And that will be lunchtime Japan time, which I think is US 8 o'clock or something like that. And it's probably a terrible time for the UK. But I'm just trying to do different times for different people where I can. And so, as I say, that's the live streaming, I think it's a good way of connecting with new audiences, but it does take a lot of time. So I think that's going to reduce my programming ability. That said, I have already got some of the ARM and 8086 work done. So those tutorials are about halfway through already from work earlier in the year. So they'll be happening early next year. But we'll just have to see. As I say, I'll be, throughout the Christmas period, I'll be basically programming. If I'm not live streaming, I'll be either programming or, just doing the other general things you have to do. But as I say, I'm hoping to get a lot of work done over Christmas in general. It's assuming I can get rid of this cough, of course, and don't have to spend all my time pressing the mute button. Okay. So we've got our defined tiles here. We're going to get a VDP screen pause. This has already been optimized. You see, I was able to remove this and statement here. I think this should be the equivalent of this. Do I need this one here? I think I think it was adding the carry. It was shifting the carry in or something. Oh. Hang on a minute, I thought it didn't need those. Okay, it did. Oh, I pulled it. Oh, that's a disappointment. Hang on a minute. I thought I'd compiled it after I removed those. Well, exactly, Evil Sandwich. The other one was Risk 5. Yeah, Risk 5 as well. I don't think you need to worry, Tad89. I'm not going to burn out. All that will happen is that I won't be able to produce as much content as I want, and I might lose the odd Patreon or something. So that's not a problem. So don't worry. It's not a question of burnout. It's just a question of I may not be able to do what I would like to do. I'm putting a lot of work into these tutorials at the moment, but I'm not prioritizing them over my own health or anything silly. It's just this is my free time. They're my number one priority, my free time. That's all. And if the free time isn't enough, then they'll just not go as fast as, or they won't be produced as fast as they could be. So as I say, you don't need to worry about that. It's I get a lot of pleasure out of doing my tutorials and doing the YouTube channel, but I do, it's a fun thing to do. It's not anymore. It's not. I have no imagination that it's getting more than that. So it's not something that I will prioritize to the point of risking burning myself out for. Yeah. That's funny, Evil Sandwich. Well, it takes all kinds, doesn't it? I mean, some people like programming 30-year-old computers with terrible processors. Other people like lifting up big chunks of metal and putting them back down again. Some people run until they're too tired to stand up anymore. So as I say, everyone likes different things, and it's the challenge, isn't it? And trying to do something that's a little bit difficult and getting a sense of achievement when you manage it. So anyway, I need to change this code. I thought that I'd removed all these push and pull alls, but I haven't. So these push and pull all macros back up all of the registers, which is nice and quick, but I want to remove the macros just in case people are trying to compile on alternate systems. And also, in some cases, they're superfluous because they're backing up X, Y, and AX and Y, sorry. But I think in most cases here, I don't need to back up A. So this is the nest, so we don't have our push X command. So we'll do a TXA, PHA, TYA, PHA, and then we'll do a PLA, TYA. That needs to be a TXA. That's funny. Yeah. It's good that you can get it working in 3 hours. The frustrating ones when there were times when I was doing my Z80 programming for Chibi Akamas, especially, and even with the tutorials in some cases, where I'd be programming for 5 hours and I'd be looking at the code and I'm like, well, it doesn't work. I've spent half a day and I've achieved nothing or possibly made things worse, and it was like, you just think, I've got to make a break in this some point. But yeah, as I say though, it's easy from the outside to look at the code and think, well, it just does 3 dots. You could do that in a GIF animating studio in 10 seconds, but it's about what you learn along the way, isn't it? It's about learning about how the process works, how to structure tasks in a logical way, how to work with limited resources. And I think even if the programming language is arguably useless, which I'm not saying it is, but if you could argue that, but I think even if you were to argue that, what you learn along the way is in my opinion definitely worth it. Exactly, yeah, or precisely. Or as I said before, painting a picture versus printing one out on an inkjet. It's definitely yeah. I think the other thing, to some extent, for me, and and I admit this isn't entirely true, but there is a sense that you grew up with these games and you sort of wondered what it was like. Well, could I ever program something of this standard and things? And that was something for me as well. The only slight apprehension I have in saying that is, we just have so much better tools now than people really had back in the day. I forget the gentleman's name, but I was watching one of Zyphy's streams. It was some spy copter game, some weird game, but he actually had the programmer live streaming on there, and he was saying that when he programmed the game originally, he was saving the compiled game on tape and loading it from tape, and then if it crashed, he had to reload the code from tape, and if something went wrong, he might lose the code. And you just think, when I was programming Chibi Akumas, I was using an emulator, so I'd just hit the compile button, start the code, and then if it crashed, I'd just reset the machine, start the code again, and I could use fast forward buttons to load the game faster. And it's just like, I was able to compile, test, recompile, retest in 30 seconds, and he'd have been waiting 10 minutes to compile each time. So I would like to believe that I could code as well as those kind of developers in the day, but unfortunately that's not true. They had so much less in terms of the programming resources, both the software that we have now, the emulators, versus using real hardware back in the day, and also the documentation we have now is incredible. We've got people have reverse engineered the hardware to a much better level, and we've got much better development tools. I mean, even something like this, which I wrote myself, and it's no great sprite editor, but writing something like this in C# is going to be far easier than writing it in assembly on the actual hardware. I didn't know Evil Sandwich, that was how it was written. So Mario Brothers was written on Commodore and Apple II. I guess that makes sense. I just never thought about it, but yeah, I suppose so. I mean, it's when, again, in the same video with regards to that guy talking about his programming experience, he was talking about reverse engineering the Super Nintendo to make that what's it called, the Game Genie 2, and he said that the processor chip, it was a field programmable gate array of some kind, but he said it could be only programmed once, and it cost $300 every time they programmed it. And you just think, oh God, if I had to pay £300, if I had to pay $300 every time I compiled a piece of code, I'd have bankrupted a small nation by now before I had anything usable. So the amount of work that he must have, the amount he must be able to sort of work out in his head or by other means other than actual real testing, it must be far higher than what I can do. When I'm programming, I always make a few changes, compile, check it still works, make a few changes, compile, and make sure something like that doesn't happen. So push, pull, push, pull. Oh, that should be it. Well, yeah, as you say, I mean, yeah, it's just Yeah, I agree with Sandwich. As I say, the stuff we've got now is just really, really, we're very lucky. Right, Robert, tell you about Turbo Pascal on the PC. Now, I don't have that. Unfortunately, I don't have that same kind of experience. I was only ever a basic programmer on the Amstrad CPC. I never. Well, I was only a basic programmer all the way up to. Well, that's got a bug in it there. All the way up to the. Well, all the way up to very recently. Truth be told. I did do C. I did do C around 2000. I using Visual Studio. Sorry. Oh, okay. It's that should be a TAX there, I think. So I finally managed to drag it back together. Yeah, TAD 89. Well, the thing that I can only assume is the case is that I mean, in the majority of cases for me, I do pretty much what you're seeing here is like, well, yeah, I make a few lines of code, I run it, check it works, write a few lines of code, run it and check it works. Now, if I'm writing something from scratch, I'll try and break it down. Like, I'll do the graphics routine in isolation and then test it, and then I'll do the input routine in isolation and test it. And the input routine, I'll make it read one button, and then I'll get that working, and then I'll copy it and make it do 2, then 3, then 4. Now, I think the older programmers who were doing it back in the day, they couldn't do that. I mean, you get the crazy example of the Codemasters. Evil Sandwich the Amigo, it's certainly extremely powerful, of course. The only thing is, as I say, the CPU works quite differently, and if you're used to the Z80, you might find you want to use it in the way of the Z80 or the 6502. And but I mean, it's got a huge number of registers. I've said before, from what I've seen of 8086, we should all be using 68,000 based systems now because it was the superior processor. I've only ever looked at the 68,000, not the 6810, 20 or 30. But as I say, the registers are just so clean. The design is just so legacy free and well designed, and you just think, the 8086, the early versions, were basically an 8-bit processor with a bit of 16-bit slapped on in some ways, and that legacy has sort of carried on. Yeah, exactly, Evil Sandwich. And as I say, when you've got H and L on the Z80, you can work with each byte independently and then combine them together, whereas the 68,000, you can't quite do that in the same way, at least not to my knowledge. So that just it annoys my Z80 brain. But what I was saying about the Codemasters is, I believe their early games, they only had one Amstrad, and they were shift working to double their amount of output. So one of them was programming while the other was either sleeping or working on the new code. So one of them would be sort of designing the code on a bit of paper, and then when their shift would come in, they would then type the code in. So they were like designing the code away from a machine, which, as I say, blows my mind. Now, I can, to some extent these days, I can kind of think of ideas, work out the sort of top level structure of a program. Well, I need a module that does this, and this will need a loop, and I'll have to use the IX register to handle the data in that loop, something like that, something very, very top level. And if a program crashes, sometimes I'll go for a walk and I'll think about it. Like, well, the program crashed when this happened, and the sound went crazy. Well, where's the sound in memory? Could this part of the code accidentally overwritten that memory? I'll be able to think of it like that, but I could never I could never write an assembly program with no testing on paper. Oh, grief, it just boggles the mind, as I say. And as I say, it humbles you when you think, you think, oh, well, I can program a nest now just because I can do a little thing like this. And you're just like, no, the guys and the people doing it back in the 80s, they were just at a different level compared to what I'm doing now, which, as I say, you just have to sort of respect the skill that some people possess out there, which is, not to say that you shouldn't be proud of what you achieve in programming, even if it's just Pong or something. You should be certainly very proud of that, but you just have to pay some respect to the people who've had to do this back in the day with time constraints and budgets, and without the benefit of 64-bit PCs and 4K monitors, because, as I say, it's just, we've got so much better. I don't know the Merlin assembler evil sandwich, so that's something I'm not familiar with. I've heard a few people talk about like these kits that allow you to plug a PC into an Amstrad or things like that, or Amstrad into a Spectrum and things, and cross-compiling from one machine to another. I don't know how that works. It sounds fascinating. I can certainly see why it would be something people would want to do, because, as I say, it'd certainly make things a lot easier to get you away from the problems I sort of described, of your machine crashing, losing all your work, and of having to reload all your work every time after you run it. So I've not managed any real work on this except for just sort of removing those macros. I'm removing the macros just because I want the code to be as uncomplicated as possible within reason. I've kept these 0-page definitions here just because I think that's going to get too far. But the theory is that maybe people are trying to compile to using other assemblers. That's a problem I've had quite a lot. I get code and I want to run it, and I can't run it because it's not using the same assembler as I'm using, and maybe the assembler they're using is part of a development kit that, like a Visual C add-on or something, and or a Linux one that I just don't have a compile for. So I'm trying to take that into account, and with this simple series, I'm trying to have no include files, and I'm trying to have all of the code as simple as possible with as few definitions as possible, just because that's something that has really bugged me in the past. Like when I started doing the WonderSwan, I got some sample files, and they were using include files that included all the hardware definitions, the symbols that would point to the memory address of the hardware, and there were literally hundreds of them in the file, and you're like, well, I can't compile your file. I need to convert this to my own assembler, and 99% of the code in this include file isn't needed, and so I'm trying to avoid doing that in my own code, just because, as I say, I think in my experience there's every probability that people are going to be using a different assembler when it comes to them actually running this. And Evil Sandwich as well. I mean, it can be quite easy once you've got the hang of things. I've been able to convert. I've had to move assemblers a couple of times with my 65816 code, for example. I've moved assemblers a couple of times with that. And, Notepad++ has this rather nice search and replace routine that can make real fast work of that kind of thing. And also the multi-file search as well, even if it can't fix the problems, you can at least find them. Sorry, I'm going to cough again. And that can make things easier, but the problem is at the start, the first thing you just want to check the code really works. You just want to see it actually start up, and oh yeah, it does what I want. Oh yeah, it outputs a cartridge file, and my emulator can work with that cartridge file, and how do I remember all of this stuff? Well, I mean, part of it is I don't. I have cheat sheets. I got some laminated plastic cheat sheets. If you go to my website, each of the assembly tutorials has a download the cheat sheet page, which is a PDF, and I have those printed out, and I have the PDFs on file here. I could get one up here, but and so often I have to go back and just double check those because I've forgotten things. And then the other thing is I am rapidly becoming the biggest user of my own website. Exactly, Evil Sandwich, yeah, that's the same here. The other thing is I'm rapidly becoming the biggest user of my own website, in the sense that if you go to the Chibi Akuma's website, there is a page related to each of the systems. So, and if you go to that, there's like a summary for each system, and it will say, oh, well, here's the colours of the Commodore 64, for example. Here's the memory map of the NES. And I'm having to look at that because I can't remember anymore. And when I was doing the early work on the TMS 9900 and the PDP-11, it's like, okay, this system's big engine. Oh, this system has a weird thing with regards to the way the bytes work and things like that. And it was like, I've got to make a note of this quick, because if I come back to this in a month's time, I'll have forgotten that and I'll be stuck again. So I was going to the I was going to my own source for the website and quickly typing in notes saying, oh, well, when you use the byte command on the TMS 990, it stores in the top byte, not the bottom byte, because, and that's a common thing you might make a mistake with if you're new to this system. And it will eventually be for the new users who are learning when the tutorial comes out. But right now it's for me. It's because I will be looking at that over Christmas going, why can't I get this TMS 990 processor working? I'm sure I got it working before. I can't remember what I did. So yeah, it's a lot of time. No, it's I have a terrible memory, TAD89, to an extent. I mean, there is a if I did it 3 weeks ago, then I can probably be reminded of it, but I will have forgotten it. So as I say, it's I mean part of it is if I keep doing something with some regularity, it stays in there. And at the moment, I'm relatively switching between systems with enough frequency that I can keep it all in there. But if I didn't do any 68,000 for 6 months, then it would all be gone again, give or take, and I'd have to relearn it all. So let's see what we've got here for the 68,000 side of things. I did promise some 68,000. So we've got Hello Worlds here. We should have some bitmap examples somewhere. Simple. There we go. So let's start with the X68000, the Japanese system. A bit clear. You see, I just looking at that. What's that be clear? I couldn't remember what the command did, but fortunately I've documented it. Now we can't rotate more than 8 in a single go. I think we can rotate maybe. Can we rotate 9? Am I imagining that? Maybe it's 8 that's the limit. Just want to remind myself that there's some. No, it was just 8 then. Okay, well, that makes sense. Okay, so I'm just going to be looking around here just to see if there's anything I can optimize out here. Let's get that console out of the way. Occasionally I've done a load 0 instead of a clear command, things like that. Now with that, I suppose we could convert that to a clear, but I'm going to leave it as is just because it's clearer. Yeah, well, Rob, yeah, my ASP code is full of semicolon comments, and when I try and do Visual Basic, I forget the then command in my if statements. It's getting really bad. I have this naive dream that one day everyone will move to sort of C structured code. Doesn't seem to be happening, which is a shame. But I say, Java Java and C# and C, they're all kind of pretty similar in the sense of the structure of the commands and the syntax. I would say very crudely speaking, but Visual Basic just seems to have just refused to do that. But then you've got like all these other new programming languages cropping up, and they're completely different again. So yeah, I mean, I don't know about you, Rob, but the other problem is, it can be quite dangerous in the sense that, if I go into work today and part of the code's not working, and I need a quick fix, and I type a line of code in that should fix it, and it doesn't fix it because I've written a C type if statement rather than a Visual Basic type if statement, and that makes the code fail even worse. It can be quite serious, but it's just like, what can you do? I mean, the only thing you could sort of say is, right, well, my employer's paying me to program this language, so I just won't program any other language ever. But that's not the way, because firstly, my employer could ask me to do something new, and all of a sudden all that C# experience comes into play, and secondly, we all need to expand our skill set for the future, don't we? So as I say, I think it's just a thing you've just got to, however you can, and I'm sure everyone's different, it just try and work around it, as I say, either with the cheat sheets or just doing a little bit of programming on each language just to make sure you don't completely forget it. But I don't know, it's difficult. Okay, so I think this code is actually pretty, it looks alright. Talking more than actually programming here, but that's alright. As I say, that's kind of the idea of these streams in a lot of ways. Both the gaming and the programming one, it's just like, well, if there's people around who want to chat about things, then I'd rather do the chatting, and if no one wants to chat or no one turns up, that's fine. I'll get on with some work. So today relatively little work has occurred, maybe. So I'm going to do the same again here. Now the X68000 in this mode is a bitmap system. I think it can do tile maps as well, but we're treating it as a bitmap system. So this, as you see, in the same format as the MSX, is our Cubico sprite. And no, there it is. I thought I'd close my sprite editor for a moment then. So if we go to the 68,000 option here, save raw bitmap, and we'll just save our character once again. Quite a few of the options on that list are actually the same. The MSX format's a sort of linear format, and a lot of the systems use that format. That's one of the advantages I'm finding now with the old sprite editor. In the early days, adding new systems meant a lot of extra coding work, but in quite a few cases now, I can claim to support a new system, and actually I've done no coding work at all because the code actually already supported it. It's just, as I say, the X68000 format and the MSX format are the same thing, which, is, as I say, quite nice. Makes things a little bit easier. I need to change this to a DCB. I need to do this as a dollar symbol this time. I want 4 entries per line. This program here just converts a binary file into assembly code. I'm using this again just to make things a little bit easier for people who are just starting out and maybe using a different assembler. Sometimes figuring out what the ink bin command is can be tricky on a new system. And in very rare cases, like the PDP-11 system I'm currently using, I don't believe it even exists. So that program turned out to be quite useful that day. So that's our code for that. And now we are Needing to change that to 8 there. Four pixels per word in 8 colour mode. That's not right, it should be 16 colour mode. That's awful. That's obviously been copied from a different system. I think that must be the from the Sinclair QL there. Yes, exactly. Evil Sandwich. I'm struggling as well. Yes, it's 68. I did promise Sim 6502 and some 68,000 today, so we're now onto the 68,000 code, which you can tell from all these A6s and D0s. And I'm currently doing the X68, and there's our smiley face, so that's gone pretty well. Just trying to remember the format here. I think it's oh, that's right. Yeah. The bytes of the CPU memory each only stores single pixel, so it's kind of memory mapped graphics hardware sort of thing. So one packed byte containing 2 pixels needs to be split out into 2 individual pixels in the addressable memory. Very strange, but that's the way it works. So that's why that code's doing that. And then moving down the line there. Probably not much we can do to that to make it better, because we could unwrap the horizontal loop, but I don't think that's going to make anything better. It's going to make a lot of code, so I think I'll leave that as is there. Let's have a look at another system. Oh my word. Well, yes, Evil Sandwich it would be. Yeah. I mean, I don't know what the code you saw originally was like, but yeah. I suppose the only advantage is you've got enough zero page that you can emulate all the 68,000 registers if you really wanted, but yeah. That was a good find on the online testing code. I'm never quite sure what to think of that kind of thing, because on one hand it's very good for beginners to be able to do things without installing any software, and if they can just do things online, and I say so I can, from that point of view I think it's a very good thing. The only slight concern I have is when I'm going through a lot of these old systems. I mean, the worst case was the Game Park, the GP32. I was thinking of doing that for the ARM tutorials, but all the websites are dead. You go to, like, the official website's gone because the company went bankrupt, I think. I used to go to the GP2X website, and I think that's like dead, or all the code's gone. All the documentation, all the dev tools, they just seem to have all disappeared. All the websites, the fan sites, are all dead or dying. So much of the stuff seems to be completely lost, and that's my slight concern with using those online tools. It's just like, well, is it going to be something that's going to disappear on you? So you come to rely on it, and then in a few years down the road, the website's gone, and the code just doesn't work, or it still exists, but the code's been changed and it no longer works in the way you were relying on. Which is why I try and write all my own tools and things, and I make everything runs. I only use programs that work offline and that don't require like online activation and things, just because I want to try and believe that I can still use them in a few years' time. And if these are things I rely on, I don't want my programming skill to rely on things that might be taken away from me in some way. So I try and do everything with open source software and offline tools. Okay. Well, wait a minute. Oh, sorry, I missed the mute button there. Well, I think the thing is, though, I mean, you're saying it's relatively limited, but I think for most people, it's I think there's some terrible cliche of the first step's the hardest or something. I think the if people manage to write just a few lines of code and see that it works and realize that they've got control over those few lines, that's going to be enough to get them get over the fear of having a go or the fear of failing and things, which I think is going to be one of the things that is really going to stop people. I mean, I would imagine that there's going to be a lot of people who would say, oh, well, I can't program computers, so that's too difficult for me. It'll be like, well, have you tried? Well, no, I haven't tried. It's too difficult for me. Well, how do you know it's too difficult if you've never tried? I think you see that. I mean, it's not just that you see that in everything, but as I say, if you've got something like that where it's like, well, downloading the code, you don't have to download anything, you don't have to install anything. You can just click this website and press copy paste, and it'll work. That's going to reduce that barrier of entry, and hopefully it'll encourage people to give it a go. So I mean, I don't know, maybe one day I will have a look at them, and these online ones, and maybe I'll do some kind of absolute beginners 60-second tutorial kind of thing of if you've never done any programming and you want to just say you've given it a go, try writing this. Because I'm saying, I think that would help people. Yeah, Evil Sandwich. Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah. I think there was something about sticking sticking a paperclip in the Commodore 64 port that would blow the Commodore 64. I heard something weird about that. That was a trick people used to play on each other. But yeah, in general terms, these old machines were rock solid. There was no firmware. There was no. It's not like Windows. You accidentally delete the Windows folder and the thing doesn't switch on. Yeah, so that was something that was really good. And the other thing that was really good that I think is missing now is when you turned on almost all of these old computers, you would get a programming prompt first. And I mean, arguably, if you were loading a game, you were using a programming command to load the game. And also, most people at some point, if you owned a Commodore 64 or an Amstrad CPC, most of them would get curious and go, oh, what else can this command prompt do other than load up Treasure Island Dizzy? And they might, oh well. Maybe they would learn a few commands along the way. Whereas if you've got a modern PC, it doesn't come up with a DOS prompt anymore. It doesn't come up with anything. And if you've got a mobile phone, I mean, yeah, sure, you could download a development tool for the phone and write your own little games in that development tool. But whereas with the C64 and the Amstrad CPC, virtually everyone did write a line or two of BASIC at some point, even if it was to print rude messages to their friends and things. But no one, in the grand scheme of things, no one owning a mobile phone installs a development tool on it and writes a line of code in it. Okay, yeah, that's funny. I didn't know that one about the pet. There was often the rumor you could do that on the Amstrad, but I don't think it was true. The first line of programming code I learned on the Amstrad is quite funny. The old Amsoft games, they used, when they were loading, they would show a message saying loading and the name of the program, and I can't remember which one it was. It might have been Roland on the Ropes, but the text would flash two colours during the loading, and I'd learned that if I took the tape out and crashed the BASIC that was loading it, I could type in the flashing text. And I used to look, and I was about 4 at the time. I used to love typing the flashing text. It was like, that was exciting to me. And my dad saw me doing this once. He's like, what on earth are you doing? Well, I want to type in the flashing text. And he goes, oh, you don't need to do anything like that. What are you being silly for? You just type this command, this like ink command in, and you can have the flashing text. And I was like, oh, that's amazing. Yeah. And that was like the first programming command that I learned on the Amstrad was, I want you can make the flashing text, and it was like I say, it was like, well, this was always there. It wasn't something you added on extra. It was the sort of bottom thing was that the system started in BASIC, and BASIC loaded the games, and BASIC loaded the programs. So I think, I mean, the Raspberry Pi, I think, has done an excellent job in the sense that if you download the packages, the pre-assembled SD card image, it's got a built-in C compiler, and it's got a load of really nice 3D examples that will compile just with a single command and run with a single command. And I've compiled and run those kind of things in a Linux virtual machine, and it can be a right pain to find, all of the libraries and add-ons you need to get the 3D examples running. So I think they've done a really impressive job there of providing the tools to an absolute novice to get them started much more easily. That's funny, Evil Sandwich. So you say the internal CRT is I'm not familiar with the PET. Is it the actual screen hardware that failed then, or is it the chip? Is it one of the chips in the computer that would blow? I mean, I'm guessing maybe it was the actual CRT tube, but yeah, that's crazy. I'm sort of mildly surprised that there's not some kind of YouTube censorship of the. Oh, okay, it was the CRT tube. Okay, there was always the rumor that there was something like that for the Amstrad, but from what I hear, from what I hear, while it was rumored on the Amstrad, I don't believe. Last time I heard, it wasn't actually possible. It was a myth, but yeah, certainly to be. You don't want to be messing with your CRT beyond what you think is going to work, I think, in general. So, raw MSX again. So this time I'm looking at the Genesis, and it's actually using the same format as the X68000. Yeah, grief. That's crazy, Evil Sandwich. There's some that you can do that cause a kind of ghost on the Amstrad where it will bounce back over the image that's already been drawn. I think, but I don't think there's any that will actually cause hardware damage, from what I've heard. But you don't want to treat them with respect. But I hope there weren't people, telling their friends to do that kind of thing. That wouldn't be very fair, because those machines were very expensive, back then. Wasn't a thing you could afford to replace just because someone had tricked you into running a dodgy command like that. So there's our smiley face. We've just got some garbage here because I'm copying loads of uninitialized tiles. Okay. So we've got our affiliated with tiles code here. So let's take that out. I don't know what the younger generation think of these old machines, Evil Sandwich. It's very difficult to work out how they're going to sort of, travel in the future. Because on one hand, you sort of think, well, the kids these days, they've all got tablet PCs and mobile phones from about the age of 3 or something crazy. And, when you've got a phone that can play GTA 3 at 60 FPS, are you really going to be interested in an Amstrad CPC or a Commodore Spectrum? And I could fully understand that the answer may be no. No, they won't be. But on the other hand, kids still play with crayons and sticks and things. So who knows? A lot of the time, it's kind of the control of it's having the ability to change what it does, and to see see the things you wanted to create actually happen on the screen and things. So maybe they will, but I don't know. I say I mean I'm not against these newer things, provided they're teaching some kind of legitimate programming. I'm not sure about things that are just drag and drop. I've programmed a VIC-20. I can't even remember what the Tandy 1000 is. Is that a PC? Yeah, it's interesting. Interesting, Rob, you say that. I mean, I'm sure it's going to come down to different people. As I say, I can fully understand that there'll be kids who are just sitting there with the Switch playing Fortnite or whatever, and there'll be other kids who are outside kicking football still. It's not like there aren't kids who would rather create than just absorb other people's stuff, even if the things they're creating are much more simple. But I mean, I don't know. I think I hope there will be a few people who will take interest in the old systems, or at least the old methods of programming. You know, doing a bit of C rather than just doing JavaScript kind of thing. I don't know. Oh right, okay. Yeah, Tandy loved their rebranding, I guess. Well, I'm not. We had the PC 1512 system. I'm gonna cough again. I don't really have. I'm guessing that was 8080, 8088. Sorry, not 8086. Um, I think I have this suspicion it was. I think it was a little bit weird, you know, having 512K instead of 640 and things. But it was okay. It was just such a huge advancement compared to what I was used to, and we had the Quick Basic as well as Q Basic, and you know that was on one hand it was a good thing because it was like a huge speed step up, but on the other hand it just meant I didn't need to learn C, and so maybe it would have been better if we didn't have it in that sense. But I don't know. I say never really had the resources back then for the more advanced programming languages. We had a book on Z80 assembly, but we didn't have the Amstrad hardware manual, and I never saw that until I started programming very recently. And you know, that is something you do need. So that's the code to do a single tile there. I just need rid of that. Ah, there's one. That's silly. Should be a clear. Yeah, there's a few of those lurking around. As I say, that's just a case of when I was writing this code originally. It was just kind of get it working rather than make it as good as possible. And you know, there's a bit of case inconsistency here. I tend to use lowercase for everything. But well, I'll have to have a look at that later, see what I can do about that. Would have been nice to I don't know, I never did any C back in the 90s. It would have been nice to do some. I mean, it was past the point where doing assembly was worthwhile, but I only came across C in early 2000. I had sort of this idea to write a game that used an iToy. It was like a motion detection game. And I only knew Visual Basic at the time, Visual Basic 6, and you know, I did a sort of crude proof of concept. I think I'd managed to find a plugin that would read a camera and get a frame, and then I was able to do motion detection on the frame by comparing the two frames and seeing what had changed. So I sort of had I was reasonably confident that the concept was sound, but the speed was too slow. Well, I mean, Evil Sandwich, in the NES was... I mean, the NES was popular late in its cycle, and the Super Nintendo was popular. I mean, I've heard that said about the UK and all these old computers. I mean, I can't comment what the US was like, but I mean, I think around the 80s, late 80s, early 90s, which was when I was sort of doing my programming, the NES wasn't popular, and it was all Amstrads and Spectrums. But then come the Amiga era and the PC era. I don't think anyone was really programming. I think everyone was just swapping discs and playing games really on the PCs. I never owned the Amiga, but I don't think the Amiga people were any different. I think they were just gamers. I don't think they... Again, I think because the system didn't start up with a programming command prompt, people just skipped that by. I say I was lucky to have the Visual Basic development tools, Visual Basic 6, Visual Basic for DOS 1 actually at the time it would have been. So I had the tools, and I was, by that point I was already at the stage where I was kind of more enjoying programming them than playing them. So as I say, for me it kind of I did get into it, but most people, say even the people I knew that were really big on the computers and things, I don't... Oh, just run that on the wrong emulator. I'm sure QBasic was big for a lot of people because, as I say, it came with a machine, of course, which again was a very nice thing to have. Right, okay, Rob. I'm not saying you're wrong. I've been watching those Micro Live things on the they did that entire series, the BBC Micro Live series, and there's one where they were comparing Amiga Basic to like the Spectrum or something crazy, and I think the BBC beat the Amiga in a speed test, or at least didn't come far behind, which kind of, I mean, that sort of sets the alarm bells off for, well, there was obviously it obviously wasn't up to much, because as I say, when I came to the PC Quick Basic and QBasic and Quick Basic, because Quick Basic you could compile to an executable and it was even faster then, and I was just blown away by the speed, because it had get and put commands that could effectively do sprites on screen, which was something that you couldn't do in Basic on the Amstrad, not really. And I was just like amazed by the sheer speed of the graphics on it. And so for the Amiga to be, put in the same category as an 8-bit in this Basic test must have really made you wonder if the Basic was any good at all. Now, my uncle had an Amiga, but he had it more for video editing. So he had this animation workshop, which I don't know what it was called, but it was very impressive to watch it animate. But I don't know what else was sort of common among Amiga users, whether there was any programming kit or any game maker studio that was big. I suppose the only one I would know was I had the 3D construction kit, which was, what was the name of the engine? I've forgotten the name of the engine. Anyway, that was it was funny. It came with a videotape, and it was like an instruction videotape. You put it in, and it was like, oh, welcome to 3D construction kit. With this tool, you can blah blah blah. And they showed loads of videos of the Amiga version. It was kind of like in the game show. It's like, now this is what you could have won. If you had an Amiga, you'd have these great animations. But you have an Amstrad, so you get 1 frame a second. Have a nice day. Or 1 frame every 3 seconds, I think was more the case. But as I say, it was just like, yeah, kind of wish I had that version. Can I have that one, please, rather than the Amstrad version? But say it was a very nice tool. Yeah. It's interesting. Evil Sandwich. The okay. Oh, I see. That's very interesting, Rob. That's the information I don't have, obviously. The Amiga was weird, Evil Sandwich. I mean, back in the sorry, I'm going to cough again. Back in the early 80s, back in the late 80s, sorry, early 90s, everyone was drooling over Amigas. Everyone wanted the Amiga, and then all of a sudden, there was just, I think it was, as I've said before, with the Super Nintendo and the PC, I think it was probably Wolfenstein 3D, that kind of era, the Wolfenstein 3D and the Doom, where all of a sudden the consoles started to lose a bit of their shine, and the PC, everyone's eyes suddenly like just switched straight to the PC and the CD drives and things, and it was all of a sudden the PC was the thing, and the Super Nintendo still stuck around, of course, and still did pretty well. It still did very well, but everyone was now looking at the PC and going, "Well, the PC's got Doom, PC's got Wolfenstein, Rise of the Triad. It's got these interactive drama games, the Seventh Guest and things." Which, I mean, the Mega CD tried to do and failed miserably. But as I say, that was all of a sudden where I think the Amiga as well. I think it just sort of fizzled out almost overnight. Which, as I say, is a shame, because it was the complete opposite. When I had my PC 1512 and the Amstrad CPC, everyone was looking at the Amiga and going, "Oh well, you know, wish we had the Amiga." And the Amiga's got all these great arcade games and these great graphics. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Well, even before that, I was amazed it could manage games like, I think they had Mortal Kombat, and did they have Worms and things like that? And some of these games were getting huge on the PC. They were like, I think that was it. I think Mortal Kombat was 3 discs on the Amiga, and I think it was at least 3. It might have even been 5 on the PC. And it was like, well, hang on a minute. The PC version's using 1.4 meg discs, and the Amiga version's using 720k. How have they managed that? And it was like, well, it seemed a bit like, you know, they're I mean, they were doing a good job of keeping the games coming out on it, but you could, again, it was like, well, you can see the PC version has become the premium version, and the Amiga version has become the also ran version, and I say it was just like, well, I don't know, maybe they were a victim of their early success because they were trying to maintain compatibility with the old Amiga 500 generation rather than. Okay. I didn't know that. Oh yeah. Well, as I say, I used to love Worms. I'll be playing that on one of the DOS streams at some point. Yeah, the 68. I mean, in Japan, the 68,000 did work. The Sharp 68,000 ran for a long time, and they had like the 68,060. I think it went up to, maybe even an 80. I lose track, but they did run it for a long time. And they went from the first version was about 10 megahertz, and they ran it all the way up to about 100. So they gave it a good go, but it just all no one could compete, unfortunately. I think it's a real shame. Yeah, I do. I'm obviously, as you can see from my machine, I'm running this in Windows, but I do like to see. I want to see more competition. It would. I would be very happy if ARM were able to release viable desktop computers with a non-Windows operating system of some kind, just to keep the competition out there. You don't want to see one person owning the entire market, whether it's, you know, Apple, Windows, or Google. You just want to see a wide variety, and unfortunately, we don't really have that at the moment in any sense. And the mobile phone market's got a bit better now. So anyway, looking at this code here. let's see, okay. I'm just checking this code to see if there's any optimizations that can be made. I know the only thing I'm noticing here is that could be changed from to so backing up far more registers than we need here. The CPU in the Sinclair QL is not fast. It's not as fast as it should be. I think it really suffers from the 8-bit address bus, 8-bit data bus, sorry. Especially I think because all the commands are 16-bit. When I ported Grime Z80 to the 68,000, I was having to slow it down because it was so incredibly fast on all of the systems. And you thought, well, of course it is. What would you expect? And then I ported the same version to the Sinclair QL, and it was so slow. I had to do a ton of optimization to get it as fast as the Z80 version, and it's like, well, okay, I know I'm not doing things in the best way here, but I never expected it to be that bad. Just realised I've not been checking out the Discord server while I'm chatting. I don't think anyone's been commenting, but I do apologise. I seem to have broken that. What am I forgetting? Hang on a minute. Oh, why am I loading any of the... Sorry, I'm backing. I don't want to push A6 on that's the one I'm intentionally changing. That's why it wasn't working. So I'm not paying enough attention. So really, all this wants to do is back up D1 and D2. This was the kind of optimization I was having to do to a great extent to get Grime 68,000 working efficiently. Now, I optimized most of the routines, but I didn't bother with get screen pause because I don't think the code ended up using it really. The tile drawing code was very, very exclusive. I unwrapped all the code, I removed all the modules in where possible so that the code was all in line. So I don't think get screen pause was used for anything except for drawing the odd character. So maybe I didn't optimize it very well. So I'm just looking at this. Okay, so save the new version here. And once again, let's export. And this is a system that's a little bit special because the Sinclair QL has a rather odd screen mode, doesn't it? Get out of the way. I can't remember what format. Excuse me. I can't remember what bit format the QL uses. I think there's one unused byte. I think there's one unused nibble for each one. So let's have a look in binary. Let's have a look in binary. Okay, yeah, there's the left hand side and there's the right hand side. Okay, I see. This is a smiley face here. Yeah, I think it's like this is bit plane 0 1 0 1 0 1 0 1 and then flashing 3 flashing 3 flashing 3, something like that. So it's really weird, but at least I can make some sense of it on screen. I'll document it properly when I do the final tutorial. It's yeah, it's just as I say, I do remember the QL layout's quite weird. It's quite interesting that I do find these 8 colour machines quite curious. The QL, the Computers Links. What was the one I was using the other day? The UKNC, and I mean the Amiga arguably in some cases, because it can do 8 colour bit planes. But there's something very it's a nice middle ground having 8 colours. Now most of those the computers and the QL, they're limited to these sort of primaries, which isn't unpleasant, but it does I think in the case of the QL, a 16-bit machine with such limited graphics does feel a little bit disappointing, but from the point of view of an 8-bit machine, I think it's much more acceptable. And Japan does have a few weird ones, like the Sharp X1 I think it's called, and the PC88, which use that kind of colour palette. It would be nice to they're systems I would like to do. I just haven't it's difficult because there'd be a lot of work to add the support for them, and I'm just, you know, the actual, there's a smiley face on screen here. I just need to tidy the code up a bit. It would be nice, I would like to do those systems at some point, but it's just it's going to be, as I say, be a lot of work to actually do them, and I think there'll be very few people who'll be interested in it, unfortunately. I don't think many people are going to be interested in programming the Q1, the X1. Not enough at this stage to justify the work. So it's why I'm prioritising things like ARM and PDP-11. Ironically, even though it's such an old system, I think there's going to be quite a few people who will have heard of it and will think, well, I don't want to program that, but I wouldn't mind hearing a bit about it. So I think it might be a surprise success. And things like the X1 and you know, there's a lot of machines I'm not currently covering, TRS-80s and things. I think maybe we'll come back to those a future year. You know, I'm hoping that my YouTube channel will maintain its current interest levels. You know, that people won't start to leave. I don't know if I'll be able to keep gaining people, but if people don't start to leave, then you know, in a future year, I think I'll come back to the Z80 and start looking around for more rare systems and start coding them as well. Sort of my plan anyway at this stage. You never know. You never know what's going to happen. You know, with all of this kind of thing, you never know. The YouTube isn't going to change all the rules because of copy or something, and they'll start favouring much larger channels, and people won't be able to find my content or something. You can't predict that kind of thing. So, but as I say, if everything continues the way it's currently going, I imagine that in a couple of years' time or in a year's time, I'll start looking for more 6502 Z80 and maybe 68,000 systems as well to cover. It'd be certainly interesting, especially the Japanese ones. I do feel a certain I've kind of missed out almost on those. You see these systems like the X68000 that when I was in the UK I'd never even heard of it, and that was a big thing over here. And you just think, well, how have I been deprived of this thing up till now? And the PC Engine as well, that was another one that hugely popular over here, but you know, no one had ever heard of it in the West. I hadn't anyway. I literally thought it was a PC at one point. It's a shame. So There we go. That's some of these systems are quite easy to do this work on. Other ones are incredibly complex, unfortunately. Just depends on the system how long it takes to convert them to this. I start from the advanced example and I'll convert them back to this simple example. The advanced example is based on the... Oh, I've got this basic macros here. I hope that's not needed. I don't think it is. No, it isn't. The code itself is based on the original platform specific series, but I have been doing a lot of extra work in here. Firstly, just removing the code that's not needed. As I say, the idea is that these are always a single ASM file, with the exception of including a binary file for the larger sprites. But things like this chip RAM section here, before this was in a separate include file before, and the header was in a separate include file, which is I find it easier from the point of view of writing code that works on multiple systems, and also maintainability. If I find a bug later on that I wasn't initializing the system in the best way, I can correct it. I can kind of retrospectively correct all of my tutorials, if you will. Whereas, of course, if they're all separate files, that becomes a bit of a problem. But again, I do accept that that is not ideal for beginners. So that's why this simple series was, that's how it came about. I had a comment, it came from a comment, I had someone sort of say, oh, well, you know, I'm struggling with your tutorials because of the fact they're all split all over the place. And it's like, well, I'm doing that because in a way that's what's suiting me, and I do think there are benefits to that, but I accept what you're saying. So where people give comments that seem logical and it's within my ability to do so, I will make content accordingly, and in this case it was actually beneficial for me as well, because I can make new tutorials based on the existing code rather than having to research, you know, topics that might be very complex and might simply take too long to produce the tutorials for in the short term. Because I'm writing 3 tutorials a week at the moment, and that is quite a challenge. So obviously I need to do this kind of coding work and then document them, and then the recording. The recording is actually the quickest bit. It takes about 20 minutes to record the video, and then about 30 minutes to edit it. Usually they end up about 15 minutes long. So this is the IST version. A multiply command, that's a 68,000 exclusive thing. Well, we're nearly at 7 o'clock, so I'm sure all of you people are probably about to go to bed or something like that, but would you believe in Japan I'm about to go to work? So more exciting programming adventures ahead of me, just not on interesting old computers. So let's switch over to my thanks for watching video here. I really appreciate everyone joining me at this time. I hope you've found some entertainment in probably not the programming today, because I haven't done very much of it, but I really enjoyed chatting about old machines and programming and things, so I hope everyone's had some fun there. I do have a Discord now. If you are interested, I'll just repost the link here. The link will be good for a few hours here, so I'm new to Discord, so I'm trying to filter people in slowly just so I can get used to it. I don't want all of those Chinese bots that were trying to hack my forum to start trying to hack my Discord. So if you are interested, and please use that link. If the link's expired by the time you want to use it, please just drop me an email. I'll send you a link there. So I say I'm not trying to do anything particularly elitist with this. I'm just trying to, as I say, let people join slowly and just let me get to grips with the Discord server before it gets mobbed by random people and things. Anyway, thanks again for everyone watching. I hope you've enjoyed it. Have a nice day now. Thanks for watching, and goodbye.